Hi, everybody. We're so glad you could join us today. I'm Genoa Stars. I am a GIS programmer with the Informatics and GIS program. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a minute. And you are here, hopefully in the correct place, at the welcome to at the workshop on ArcGIS Online. All right. We are a program in the University of California, Agriculture and Natural Resources, which has really excellent statewide programs, but also really incredible on-the-ground work going on all the time by Cooperative Extension. You can see here, everybody's distributed throughout the state in a lot of the different counties. We have research and extension centers, we have staff on affiliated campuses, and then we also have Cooperative Extension offices. Hopefully you've heard of some of these programs like 4-H and the Master Preservers, but we also have policy and nutrition teams. But our neck of the woods here tends to be based on the computer or out in the field, supporting those sorts of efforts and doing additional research using GIS. Our team is small, but we are certainly mighty. There are 7 of us, and we are experts in GIS and drone services. Sean is our go-to drone guy. That includes LiDAR and different kinds of remote sensing. We offer a variety of workshops. You're in one today, so I'm glad you've heard of them, but tell your friends. In things including spatial analysis and coding, but then also we have a week-long drone camp that will happen every summer, or usually happens every summer, that gives people hands-on experience with drones and drone data processing. And then we also offer office hours. So for people who have a question that may not be covered in training or are just looking to get started in some of the kind of broad concepts or extremely specific problems that come up when you're working with GIS, you can sign up for just a quick half hour to get pointed in the right direction with someone on our team. And I think I have a link to office hours I can paste in the chat. There we go. I've got 3 monitors, so I'm pretty powerful. And do lots of pasting. All right. Today, you'll hear from Sean Hogan, who did our little introduction there. And then I, and there, Genoa Stars. And behind the scenes, I don't think we have Shane. I think we have Andy instead. And then Priyanka and Shane. Oh, no, we have Shane, Andy, and Priyanka. Sorry. The circles are different, but these are really great folks who will help you if you have specific problems throughout the workshop while Sean is presenting and maybe can't multitask. So please do not be shy about reaching out in the chat if you have any questions or if you need something backtracked. Always happy to help. Now, that being said, I would love to know a little bit about you guys. Would you mind adding some information about who you are and maybe what you want to learn from this workshop and your level of experience with ArcGIS Online in the chat? You won't be graded on them. We just want to know kind of who's interested in this sort of topic and where they're kind of coming from going into this workshop. I know I have worked a lot with ArcGIS Pro, but maybe have been dabbling more in ArcGIS Online in the last few years, as it's a more emerging technology, and I love to have full control of my local data, but it's a really great resource, and we're excited to teach you more about it today. So go ahead and pop that in the chat if you're feeling it. I'm sure you might meet some other people with similar interests if you choose to put something in there. And this is a map. Generally, we create a map of participants. We don't have one for this workshop, but a lot of our folks who come to these sorts of trainings are based on university campuses. You can see some clusters here in San Diego in the Bay Area, but throughout the state, and sometimes we have participants globally, which is pretty cool. This is what we will be covering today. So I'm going to do your introduction. I think we're off to a good start. It'll be a quick intro into GIS, WebGIS, and Esri. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about WebGIS through the lens of ArcGIS Online, what web maps and web apps are, and what analysis kind of entails in the cloud. I'm going to tell you why you should use ArcGIS Online, some cloud data concepts, a general workflow, and then design considerations when you're making products. I'll let Sean go through what he's going to work on during his time in the second half, or the major component of the workshop, but just giving you a little roadmap here. And hopefully it'll help you find this information when you come back to it after the workshop. So, question 1, what is GIS? So GIS, besides just being kind of a catch-all term for anything that has spatial data, is pretty specifically geographical information systems. Those are what the letters actually stand for. And they're systems for acquiring, managing, analyzing, and disseminating geospatial data. So if any of those words didn't bring up further questions, I'm really impressed with your knowledge already. But another way of thinking of it is it's a way to take the four-dimensional world, this kind of factor of space and location, into a computer to get those numbers so we can do analysis and visualization. Now, this is made possible because we have this spatial frame of reference, geo-referenced data. It's powerful because then we can do analyses on them. And then we can symbolize them and make them beautiful and interpretable through cartography and design. So here you can see on the right, some layers, this kind of thing you've probably seen before, the data lasagna, I like to call it. But we have 5 different ways of representing spatial data or data via map. So spatial data are this representation of reality, and GIS systems are how we can kind of annotate them, write them down, and use them for analysis. Now, GIS and Esri software have had a long-standing relationship. Esri has been kind of dominant in the field of GIS for a long time, and they released some flagship software, which was primarily based on desktop machines called, we had ArcGIS, we had ArcInfo, ArcView, ArcMap, ArcDesktop. You can kind of date somebody's GIS career by which version of Esri's desktop software they may have bitten into first. But generally, we get our GIS data through maybe point collection. You pull it from somewhere else. It's loaded into this kind of desktop software, and that used to be where it ended. However, since 2012, there's been the advent of web GIS systems. In Esri software, this is ArcGIS Online and a number of their other products. But there are other web systems. And then this enabled this whole cloud environment in addition to local software. So moving forward from here, let's just break it into the big eras of GIS. So we had before web GIS, you have GIS professionals who have these kind of heavy-duty machines. They have expensive, specialized software on their desktop machines. And when they're sharing data, I mean, this is not as true today as it used to be. You had to go share the data. Like maybe you're walking down the hall with your thumb drive. Maybe you could email a file potentially. But it was generally more of a hard copy model, like a library. You would go get the data, you could make your copy from it, but the files lived in a machine that you had to go access it from to get it onto your machine. Now, after WebGIS, GIS could be used by anyone. It's accessible by any web browser, maybe not any. Let's qualify that. It enabled massive accessibility to spatial data. And then we have all these other kind of interpretive, interactive tools that stem from that development. So I think of this more like a Wikipedia phase. We've got lots of data coming in from all different places, accessible by many different people, kind of a wild west of geospatial data. And again, through Esri, this platform is specifically ArcGIS Online. They have this really gnarly tagline, a complete software as a service for your mapping and analysis workflows. I don't think that really captures everything it does, but we'll go into it a little bit more now. So ArcGIS Online, it's a resource for finding new data, and it has some data that are curated by experts. So you can still think of it as kind of that atlas model. It's got somebody who goes and verifies where it comes from, and then they kind of stamp it to say it is a certified resource. There are, of course, also many generated by communities that are not verified, or by the community. It's a central hub that you can use as an individual or an organization to share or store data and maps. It is a cloud-based platform for data access and analysis, and it plugs really easily into other Esri software and apps. It's good go-to for lots of different tasks, but generally for extension, I like to recommend it for quick spatial analyses, for decision-making, for organizing and distributing internal data and maps, and for just exploring what data is out there. It's really easy to find lots of different resources. So it stands out as this great resource for data discovery, cloud-based, so you can share it with people who don't have ArcGIS Pro or desktop software. They just have to have internet access. It's a tool to turn data into maps. So visualizing spatial data is a barrier to entry for lots of people. And this is a great way to just get it on there, get it on the screen, take a look. And it's a platform that has a lot of organizational support and potential for collaboration within UCANR and between teams. So the other reason ArcGIS Online in particular is what we cover is because it's part of this Esri ecosystem, which is an absolute behemoth. They have all these softwares and all these apps that people might be familiar with: ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS for Excel, Story Maps, Field Maps, Survey 123 dashboards. There are so many of them, I cannot even list them here. And it's kind of a default for a lot of agencies. So some of the strengths here are that it's dominant in the field. So there's a lot of government and academic buy-in. Your university probably has a subscription. State governments use Esri. The federal government puts things on Esri systems. And so it's really easy to pull their data and use it. It has a focus on user interface. I am a coder. I love to do things by typing, but Esri has really successfully developed this model for those of us who prefer to point and click, to see things and interact with menus. I think they're a lot like Microsoft in this respect. They have this great user interface that people find fairly intuitive to use. It has this integration with their other software like web maps and apps. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for that. And then they'll also host your data. So the layperson doesn't ever have to think about this, but if you've ever tried to share data with people, zipping files, things like that, Esri offers some ways to work around that that can be a little bit more accessible. And then I guess you can quote me on this, but I'm going to say they don't always do things the best, but they do all of it. So if you're going to subscribe to one tool or one system, Esri is often the go-to. So why use ArcGIS Online in particular? It has this really great integration and workflow. You go from kind of collecting data or pulling data from their systems or adding your own. Then you have this design component in the web map where you can take a look at your data and decide how to symbolize it and kind of think about what you want to do with it or what sort of delivery system you want. And then it feeds right into this development where you can do some analyses, produce web apps, story maps, all these things so that people can access and learn and share your data. So I've been throwing around these terms quite a bit, but I'll go into the definition. You'll hear Sean talk some more about these in the workshop, but a web map in particular is a tool that supports web mapping applications. It's basically you put data in and it puts it on a map. You can click on the data and learn more about it, but it's kind of the hearthstone of moving into web apps and web analysis. They're basic online maps with custom symbology. They have limited layout options and some analysis capabilities. These then feed into web apps. These look like a web page. Generally, they're graphically appealing. They tend to be kind of slick. They have a lot of layout options and bells and whistles you can kind of set up, especially through this Esri system. And this includes some things you've probably seen. Story maps, dashboards, and smartphone apps are all things that are considered web apps. And then we have web analysis. So these are things you can do with your data and with your web map to then feed into web maps. So you can quantify spatial patterns and relationships in data. Again, this is why we're doing GIS. We want to understand the spatial component and see that on a figure. So using a variety of spatial data, including raster and vector data, you can do analyses, including spatial analyses, and then you can display the results. You can feed those back into your web maps and take a look. Here's an example of a web map. We have one that looks quite similar to the one at the beginning of the presentation. Dots on a map, people can click on it, take a look. Pretty easy. And then these can also be collaborative, so it's so easy to share and have people take an initial look at data. Then we have some web apps. Here we have a few story maps. We have a little dashboard action going on in the middle there with some pie charts. So these are examples of kind of story map and dashboard formats, and these have a lot of content. They can have a lot of text and images and interactive material. At the bottom here, we have an example of field maps running. So field maps enable people to collect data via a smart device. And then on the right, we have a list of some of the web analysis options that you can do in the cloud. I didn't have an exciting picture for these, but hopefully some of the things on this list are familiar to you in some of your data goals. And there's a lot of options, and there's more all the time. So I'm going to put a quick plug here. We're having an Intro to ArcGIS Story Maps workshop on April 24th. So if any of this piques your interest, you get to the web map stage and you want to move into some web apps, that might be a great place to dive further in a couple months. Now, there are some caveats. There are things that ArcGIS Online does not do particularly well yet. They're always working on it. They used to have some pretty big problems with projection control. It was pretty finicky about what you could put in and what projection it was in. It's actually gotten a lot better. So this one is not as true as it used to be. It's something to keep an eye on. If you know, you know. But if you are not familiar with projections, this probably will not even come up for you. They've gotten so good at it. This one still holds true. Cartography and design for static products are better in desktop software like ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Online specializes in lightweight, interactive products. When you want to do a really beautiful cartographic printable figure, you're going to want to go to some sort of desktop or alternative software. And then advanced analyses. Again, lightweight, efficient, flexible, that's ArcGIS Online. Some of these really heavy analyses are not quite ready to be used, or I don't recommend doing them in ArcGIS Online. Some of them are not options, and some of them, it's just going to take a lot more time and effort than doing it in a desktop product. You can ask us about that in office hours if you have any specific questions. So now we're going to just kind of segue into cloud data concepts. So some of you may be coming from a GIS background and are familiar with ArcGIS Pro. If you're not, this will still be useful. You can ignore this first point. But when using desktop software versus cloud-based software, for example, Pro and ArcGIS Online, your local machine has a really big software on it that has libraries of functions and routines. Everything's kind of there at your fingertips. You just have to flip through it and find what you need, and then you can use it immediately. It might take a long time to run, but all that material is already on your machine. In the cloud, you work with quote unquote cloud-based data via a range of purposeful apps. So again, we're talking streamlined workflows. I like to think of this as compare it to working on a computer versus on a phone. I didn't really understand the app system at first. I was like, I always want to be able to do everything. But from the perspective of working with data that is on someone else's machine, it makes sense to only pull things in that you need and only work with things in your browser, functions, capabilities that you might need for your particular project. Otherwise, you just have a lot of things running in your browser that will slow your process down. So this is to keep things lightweight and kind of do on-demand processes. So you might have to have a little bit clearer intent when you're working with data in the cloud, be a little bit more patient, and really think about what you want to produce, and then find the correct app for your needs. You might be familiar with some of the local data formats. So local data are generally stored as geodatabases if you're working in Esri, shapefiles, GeoJSONs, KMLs, that's what Google uses, grids, CSVs, TIFFs, all sorts of stuff. I'm sure you have seen some of that before. Cloud data, we don't get to see as much because it's in the cloud. It's not on our own machine. And in ArcGIS Online, they use this layers and services format. So you have a layer, which is generally the data itself. And then whenever you push something up into the cloud, it also creates this service definition that when you publish it, kind of gives instructions on how that data can be used and accessed. You can see here, there's about 1 billion different types of data when you put stuff up there. I'm not even familiar how to define some of them myself, but the basic ones I would say are feature layer and imagery layer, and those are probably the ones you'll primarily be working with. Now, it can be confusing to see all these different elements, but this layers and services format is very consistent, and usually it's not really a huge issue which particular format you choose or your data comes in as. It does a lot of that for you automatically. So you've got your data in ArcGIS Online. You want to find other data to go with your data in ArcGIS Online. This is really a great standout thing that ArcGIS Online does for users. So they have a content pane. And you can find curated data, which I mentioned earlier, using Living Atlas. So Esri provides this for users, its layers and services accessible to both ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online. And it includes data that Esri has confirmed the kind of provenance or accuracy of, and some of it they've produced themselves. Then we have ArcGIS Online. So this is data that anyone has pushed up and made public in your organization or in general. And then we have your own content. So there are lots of different ways to kind of organize your content, but you can always access it here in this pane. And again, all of these are accessible if you're logged in to both your Pro account and your ArcGIS Online account. If you want to share your data, you have pretty good control over it, which is really another high point of ArcGIS Online. So your data, your products, so your web maps and apps, can be shared with several different restrictions. So you can share it only to the owner. That's a great thing to do if maybe your data isn't polished yet, or your map isn't symbolized the way you are ready to share it with other people, or maybe it's sensitive data. If you set it to owner only, it really is only yours. You can share it to a group. So if you have people in your organization you can have them create accounts and then set up a little group that you can share within. You can share it within your organization as a whole, and then you can share it with everyone. So if you're creating something like a story map, publishable narrative, you're going to want to make that data public so that everybody can see your products. Then when you're using this in kind of a WebGIS workflow, we've covered this a little bit, but here's the full picture. We have our data component. So that can be local from your machine. That can be data you pull in from Living Atlas or ArcGIS Online. You can then push it up or access it directly in the cloud in the web map. And then you can combine them and symbolize them in the web map viewer. And then you can develop final products, experience builder, field maps, story maps, all kinds of things. So there are a few things to consider when you're doing these maps, apps, etc. Who are your users? Who are your stakeholders? What's the objective? What do you need to show on the map and how are you going to show it? What to include and what to leave out. I really encourage people to think about this. I think of maps like graphs or charts of space. So including too much information can be just as difficult for people to interpret as not including enough. Are there ethical considerations of your data? And then in particular for ArcGIS Online, what needs to be customized and what trade-offs are you making in terms of limiting accessibility and flexibility when you do make things really customized? ArcGIS is really good at making things flexible and web accessible. And sometimes we would like things to be a particular way, but they don't quite offer that level of flexibility without giving something up. And then there are some logistical considerations. Do you want it to be dynamic or do you want it to be static? What kind of data do you actually need? How much? If you put too much data in, if you extend it beyond the area you need, it's going to kind of clog up the pipes, as it were. Is the web map going to go on an existing website or is it going to feed into another Esri product? Do you need it to work on a tablet or smartphone? Do you need it to work offline? This is a big consideration. And then do you need to collect field data using the application? This is a really cool use case. Again, you can ask about it in office hours. But sometimes you can create things for people to actually use to collect their field data. How much programming will be required and what is your budget? So I think that's a great segue into the workshop. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, make sure you keep putting questions in the chat as they come up. And thank you so much for sharing your interests. It's really great to read about your experience. I will pass it over to Sean.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. That's a perfect introduction to what we're going to be covering here. And a lot of what Genoa just spoke about is going to make a lot more sense when you actually get your hands on it. But just so you know, for the next ballpark of 20 minutes to a half hour, hopefully more like 20 minutes, we're not going to actually be getting our hands dirty yet. I'm going to go through just what we're working towards, some of the buttons and levers that you need to be able to push, because sometimes that one click is like it's a mystery to you if you don't know where it's at. And in those occasions when that does happen, even if If you just miss something I say, you can always put it in the chat. We got the team here that can help you out. I'm going to have fairly frequent breaks so we can get you caught up. I It's like one of those things. I plan for the worst, hope for the best when it comes to this stuff. So I have like redundancies built into the exercises and so forth. And typically before every one of these workshops, I go back and watch the previous workshop on our YouTube channel, and there's we've honed this in pretty well, so hopefully no one has any problems, or at least no significant problems. But if you do, don't hesitate to put it in the chat and ask. A couple little housekeeping things. If you do want to go through this, work through the exercises I go, that's completely feasible. Sometimes people just want to watch and like absorb it that way. Sometimes you want to look at the exercise and go through the exercise step by step. That enters a caveat that the way that I go through the workshop, I cover the same material, but I do some things out of order in the way that it's written in the exercise that was emailed to you at 11:35 this morning. The reason for that is that I, for example, put how to do all your style and symbology in one section, where the smooth workflow is that um, you'll adjust those things as you bring layer in after layer in, and that it's just a little more efficient. But in terms of you looking at the exercise and saying, how do I change the style on this? You just have one section you have to go to. So I do that on purpose. 1 second, I need to adjust something on here. And there we go. I just realized that Jano was still spotlighted, and I am going to share my screen. Good. So speaking of housekeeping, so there everyone's after COVID, it's probably pretty good at online learning at this point and trying to maximize the real estate that you have on your screens. But still, I like to give just a little suggestions on how I prefer it for doing a workshop like this. And that is that I'll take the directions, the exercise directions, which by the way, would be handy for you to have downloaded again from that 11:30 email and have off to the left side because there'll be potentially some copying and pasting unless you like to type quicker. It's easier just to copy and paste from the exercise sometimes. And when you open that up as a PDF, occasionally some Adobe products won't let you copy and paste very well, so you might want to right click and open it in like Chrome or one of your other browsers. It makes it easier to open to copy and paste from PDFs. At least I've had that come up in previous workshops, which is just kind of a pro tip. But I digress. So I like to have my exercise directions, which I have here on the left. And then I'll typically put my working environment, my actual ArcGIS online pane, my window in the center and leafed off a little bit so I can toggle back and forth between them like this. Just makes life easier. When you want to copy from one, click on the next and then paste on to the into the correct places. The little bit about Oh, and then as far as the zoom goes, this is tricky. Again, coming back to not a lot of real estate on your screen, I will typically put my zoom window over to the far right, just so it's out of the way of the other two. You might want to be watching what I'm doing a lot of the time if you happen to have double monitors. Oh, that's fantastic because then you can just watch what I do and it makes your life easier, I'm sure. But um, as I share my screen, you can see where I'm clicking and where I'm doing it, and you can oftentimes just follow along, and once in a while have to refer to the exercise to copy and paste. So having it just tucked down to the side is nice. Again, with the zoom window up high is also nice sometimes. I tuck all that stuff away, and I'm gonna hide my floating controls. That way I don't have that in the way. If you because I've tucked everything away so don't have my zoom in front of my the front of what I'm working on. If you do have a comment, again, my team will answer those questions or pass that on to me. Now back to the exercise I have here on the left. This is in Google Drive for me. Yours will be in a PDF. The reason I keep it as a Google Doc is because once in a while I see a little thing that I like to change as I go through the workshop just to make it a little bit cleaner. And so having it there as a Google Drive doc is just more convenient. You'll see there'll be a lot of just info only stuff that is through here, how to start it up. This is largely set up for someone that doesn't have someone explaining it to you like I will be, but there'll be just info only about menu options, which I'll cover in a moment, is a kind of this orientation I mentioned in the first 20 to 30 minutes, where just getting the lay of the land as far as the screens of ArcGIS Online, where everything's at. And then once we get past that, all of that information, which we'll cover in a moment, you'll see other information about peripheral apps because ArcGIS Online largely functions as a hub for access to both data and to other apps. So you can reach out and you like connect data and functionality with things like field maps or Survey 123 or Experience Builder, if that's like on. We'll touch on that at the very end, but there's different apps that are associated with this. Is this kind of being a nexus for data accessibility? But here's some information about those peripheral apps. We'll start off by adding and creating a map. I'll touch on that in a second. I have that up on the another screen to show you where we're working towards. The exercise will be mostly working in the map section. Uh, this goes to one of the things that was the biggest hardship early on. Granted, when I started doing GIS now, gosh, 20 years ago, roughly, I give or take, there was no ArcGIS Online or web mapping for that matter. It was ArcGIS, ArcMap, or is even an earlier generation of that ArcView that I started working on. And then eventually these web mapping applications or web map um, building tools became available. But it still goes back to the original issue that you had with GIS was finding data and getting data into your maps. Well, we're going to cover that right off the bat. The bright side is that you have hundreds of thousands of layers readily available at your fingertips through ArcGIS Online, where back in the old days, you didn't have any of that. You had to call up the local office to get it, and they maybe emailed it to you or so forth. But I'll show you how to enter data from a variety of sources via ArcGIS Online, as well as from Living Atlas is another repository of data. And this workshop's going to largely focus on wildfire or wildfire risk, damage, that sort of thing. And I'll explain why in a moment, but just know that the skills that you will see throughout this workshop exercise, they're transferable to any number of different things. I just use this as because it was a meaningful example to me, and I happen to have the data and the familiarity with where everything was at for it. And so it's a real life application, but the same steps that are used in this are very universal for all kinds of different projects that you will probably be able to see for yourself as you move along. We'll also look at a very common thing is going to be adding tabular data to your maps. In this case, it's essentially Excel spreadsheet as a CSV file, but that can come from Google Drive, which I've given instructions here for as well. We'll look at some other types of analyses that will play with it. Traditionally, online environments have not been where you can do your analyses so much. It's usually the desktop where you do that kind of thing with an application like ArcGIS Pro, but now there's way more functionality online. As I'm scrolling through this, you'll see that there's certain things that are highlighted in red. That's just so it pops out and it makes it easier for both my eyes to spot and yours eyes to spot to copy and paste into the search parameters, for example, in the exercise. It'll make your life and mine easier too, just to have those stand out. Be looking at some fire perimeter data downloaded from an FTP database from Cal Fire. So that's a kind of a neat source or resource there. And then finally, we're going to be adjust doing some kind of online computer cartography to change styles and also to create web mapping applications, which Genoa kind of touched on. What might not have made sense is that there's a difference between a web map and a web mapping application. The web map is the map itself. A mapping out web mapping application is something where you put in infographics and widgets and, for example, north arrows or legends and so, things like that. Different tabs for information that and web mapping applications can take all kinds of different flavors. Sometimes they will be something like a story map, which is almost web page-esque in its presentation and the way that it looks. So we'll be getting through all of that by the end down here. Just so you know, I mentioned there's going to be redundancies where you can open things that if you're say your license doesn't allow you to bring everything in. And so what I've done here, and I've shared it freely with everybody, it's on the bottom of page 19. There's this section that will explain how, in case you lose everything, say your computer crashes partway through and you don't want to start all over from scratch. I created what we're working towards, which I'll show you now in a moment. Um, that you can bring up on your own and then get right back into it and maybe ahead of even where you were at before. Just as a just the like I said, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Having that option there available is there. I won't go through those steps right now. It's pretty simple. This is all done from inside of your map pane, which I'll show you in just a second. But because I already have it open here, or a practice example of the same thing. So again, you don't have to be following along with me on this stuff whatsoever. There's this is just the orientation to the app. When you first open up ArcGIS Online, and we'll do this in the next hour, you'll go to ArcGIS Online, sign in. You'll sign in using the credentials that you were sent to you or you got set up. And the first thing will pop up, in my case, it defaults to content. Sometimes I've seen organizations and people come up, it'll pop up to their homepage, and this is what it'll look like. If it's a brand new thing, which there has been, there's a February update. I mean, what it's like, I don't know when in February, but there was an update when I started working on this. And so I left it so I didn't exit out. But inside of that, it'll tell you all of the new things that have been updated. Some things have been updated that I noticed that and I'll show you as we go, which are kind of funny. They're not listed here, but there's like rendering things that have changed slightly that I seem to have noticed. But this is continuously like being updated in the background. The vast majority time it's for the better, and the functionality of it has just grown and grown over time. It's quite amazing. So that's this, the new features will pop up if it's there. Now I can X out since I showed it was there. There's the home. This is just a splash page where you come in. I'm going to go across the top. There's the ribbon across the top there that'll give you some of the functions. Some of you might not have notebooks. This is something that has to be specifically enabled to your account, which might not have been set when you received it. But I'll touch on that. But if you need notebooks, then yeah, you'll have to ask your your ArcGIS Online account manager for whatever group you are. With us, it's that Shane Fire and Robert Johnson, but there's any organization has their own people, administrators that do that. So next, we're going to go over to gallery. That's across the top and moving right to the left. And why this keeps on popping up, I don't know. But the in your gallery, what you'll see is all of the maps layers. You can see maps, layers, scenes, apps, you name it. Everything, even notebooks, everything that has been developed within your organization that has been shared at the organizational level. That'll make more sense in a moment when we look at groups and sharing later on. But but yeah, this is everything that's been shared at least at the organization level or to everybody. So you can then that might, in our case, include like our research and extension centers. Sometimes we will just refer to those as our RECs. Those we have nine now, 10 of those across the state of California. They're applied research centers and education centers, but the so that would be something specific to our organization. If you have something specific to another organization, that might be within your gallery here. I don't usually refer to this because I usually know what I'm looking for, but it's just know that there's a gallery gives you a lot of options that are out there. We're gonna I'm gonna come back to map in a moment just because it's something that is specific. It's usually where you're working out of. Scene. So again, I'll skip map, jump over to scene. This is kind of neat because oh, this is new. So like I said, ArcGIS Online, their updates. Let me refresh it and see if it learn more. Okay, well, we're gonna skip that because apparently the new version of ArcGIS Online is not happy with some acceleration, something or other in my hardware, and so we're not going to get to see that little spot. Granted, that's just for fun, show and tell. It's not really critical to anything whatsoever that we're going to be working on. But I said, vast majority of the time when they do an update, it's for the better. Just in this case, it doesn't agree with my computer. So the scene, essentially what that is creating like 2.5 dimension models that you can then copy the URLs from and put into like iframes and that kind of thing, or even your web maps, your story maps, all those kinds of things. Think of it as like what you'd see as like a flat map, but added topography to it. And it looks really neat when you say drape something like a drone image over an elevation model and you can get some kind of neat results. But that's not going to work for me today. Notebooks, I'll switch to that one. And this is going to give us an interesting look. I was fairly confident this one was going to work. The scene requires a special type of graphics uh, card or acceleration. This would not. Uh, this is where I mentioned earlier that it's really neat because in the past, you did all your analyses in, or almost all of them, in something like ArcGIS Pro, and then you published your products or you uploaded your products to your online environment where the purpose of the online or ArcGIS Online or your web mapping applications was to display or visualize that your data. It wasn't where you did your analyses at. Now that's not the case so much, and even more so because of notebooks is built on top of Jupyter Notebooks. So you can create a new notebook and use set different levels of GPU support. That's online GPU support. It'll use credits, which we'll talk about in a moment. Exam 30 credits per hour for advanced GPU is not that much. I think we're talking about that, but everyone gets 10,000 right off the bat. It's a lot of hours of analyses that you can do with that. But once you create your Jupyter notebook, then you can, if you're a coder, a Python coder, you can you can do quite a bit of analyses in this environment. Now, I want to point out something that changes when you go into the notebooks. This might look a little bit familiar to you, setting up dependencies and all that kind of stuff. And that's you'll have to that's way beyond what this workshop's about, but it is a chance for me to plug our office hours. If you have an issue or a question or anything that related to almost anything geospatial tech, then we have our IGIS office hours on Monday and Tuesday afternoons. And say if it's about remote sensing or certain topics, especially drones, I'll be the one that'll be on deck for that. If it's like Python coding, it could be Shane or Robert. If it's R Foundation, that'd be Andy Lyons. Genoa also is good at all these different things. Priyanka, my team is pretty spectacular in all their different skill sets, and they're a wide range. So if you have a question about anything, you can go to the UCANR-IGIS website, just sign up for an office hour slot, and then we can get into things like how set up your Jupyter notebooks, for example, your notebooks online here. Again, I digress. Back up here, you'll notice that the horizontal options disappeared across the top. Now they're under this three bar hamburger stack here on the top left. So now it's like home, gallery, map, skipping scene again, notebooks. We're going to go to groups now. And I'm going to leave this. And this thing's never going to stop popping up, apparently. Good. So once you get into groups, this is where you can set up groups specifically. The only times I usually do a group is if I'm going to be developing a web map for a data collection app, something like field maps. An example of that would be, let's see, like if you want to do a tree finder app or a tree disease app and have people in the field that have the expert knowledge to be able to identify certain diseases and that sort of thing, they would be the only ones that that map would be shared with, so they could do edits and add things to it. So that's a big case example of how you would create a group or why you'd create a group. And the way you do that is you just go in, you create a group, and then once the group is created, you'll have, and this is the next step after I save it, you can just add members from your organization, and it has to be from your organization once it's created. So I can flip over here, just for example, of my organization's groups. There's core team, there's Firewise, there's carbon farm plant. There's so many different groups. The 4-H group that has yeah, there's these are groups that have specific maps that group's interested in, that they don't want to share that particular map completely public facingly. So beyond groups, I'm gonna yeah, I'll go to yeah, I'll skip the content. I'll go straight to content instead of organization. Finish with organization and then map. And then we will take a break. So in your content, this is my default opening place, where when I open up ArcGIS Online, it goes to my content. And think of this as like your library, glossary, essentially, of all of your data with organizational options on it. Specifically for organization, you can have folders down the side. In my case, I have like broadband and Calistoga, Mediterranean oak borer. Uh, I have a training folder that I'll be throwing stuff in. I have a junk folder, largely for workshops, where I create like 10 of the same layer that I don't need 10 of that. So I put them in there, and then I can flush out that folder once in a while. But I have a bunch of groups for various different projects. But everything, if I'm at the top, all of my content will show up in the center here. What you'll see here is there's a bunch of, the content can entail anything from a web map to a hosted feature layer. So hosted is just a way of saying that you're hosting a feature service that is uh, that is available out, like beyond just yourself. And hosting has different rules to it. I've heard it referred to as kind of like where it's like an item on a menu, and that menu has like certain things that you can do, like certain ingredients that could come in with your layer. If it's not hosted in certain ways, then you can't edit it or do analyses with it. It makes it more difficult. But whenever you create a layer, the default is to be a hosted feature service or feature layer, and then it's available. You can see a CSV file that I just uploaded earlier. Web maps. Let's see. There's shape files, instant apps. That's something we'll do later on. web experiences, something we'll work on later from Experience Builder. There's models that you can create. So this is everything that you can possibly might want to have. There's something that's interesting about these. If you get one that you want to use all the time, you can click on these three dots on the side and add it to your favorites. And then if I click on my favorites, there's certain things like this workshops fire workshop example that I'll show you in a second, or something same similar to. That's a favorite because I want to come back and look at it once in a while, or be able to show audiences that for well, yeah, presentation purposes. And then there's your groups, and that we already touched on groups, and my organization and Living Atlas. Living Atlas is just a location that is has a bunch of curated data in it. Second to last, well, actually, second and a half from last, because there's one little teeny thing I'll show you at the very end. If I click on the organization, you'll see that there's credits. Our organization has a ton of credits. Don't worry, you're going to automatically have 10,000 credits like attributed to you if you're a part of UCANR, and that will go a long ways. We've only ran out once when one of our actually really good advisors in Southern California, I think he tried to geocode. That means like create, like plot on a map every address in Los LA County. I think he tried to do it twice, and that used up our credits. And fortunately, ESRI, the parent company of ArcGIS Online, was really generous and replenished us. But now we have a limit that's set. But if you do happen to run out of credits, just let us know. If it's a good cause, we can definitely hook you up with more. And what those credits are used for is various analytical things that you do. Just so you know, this is a little different for some of you because I'm an administrator, but then we have controls over members, licenses, and other settings. All right, now I'm going to go to map, but instead of clicking on this, I already have a map opened here. So if I would have clicked, oh, it opened up over my map when I went to, all right, well, that's fine. I'll just go to map. Let's see if it's probably not open in the background. This is one of the reasons why, by the way, you save your stuff. If you go outside of your map and then come back into it, you can lose your map. And finally, fortunately, I can just go in and open map, and it'll probably give me the last map I was working on in my content, which is true. That's the last one I worked on. I'll open that map. Cool. And slowly but surely it'll be coming in here. Once once this is in, there's going to be just some kind of it's actually kind of standardized between a lot of ESRI products now. Again, parent company ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, Experience Builder, all these different apps. The what they do is they'll typically put general higher level options across the left-hand side of the screen with what's called a pane that pops out next to it. So in this case, this is the layers pane. So if I click on the add button, it'll pop up something else. Sometimes if I click on base map, it'll pop up a base map pane, or in layers right now. If I click on one of these layers, it's going to, if I sometimes have to click on them twice, it'll pop up conditional options specific to that layer on the right-hand side of the screen. Again, this is a very common convention for Esri products or apps now. If I click on a different one of these, it'll give me different options. And sometimes it varies if it's a vector, so a point line or polygon shaped layer, or a raster, which is an image, like something like what you'd see in the background there, a base image. We'll have different options. If it's actually a base layer, the base map, then you don't have really any options. You just have to turn it on or off or change the base map. So in here, this is going to be what we're working towards. I'm going to reduce this down. This is from the 2021 Caldor fire. And just a little teeny bit of a background on this. is that when I happen to own property right here. If you can see my cursor, there says Cody Way, Sweeney. It's like right along here. The I was there the night that the fire really got going, and it burned up to within 500 feet of my dad's house. It burned onto my property. Luckily, I don't have any structures, but we had to run out of there in a really big hurry because I thought everything was going to burn down. Just as a miracle would happen, the wind changed at the right when it got to the house, blew back on itself. The house was saved. But I was out of there. Everything was locked out. I was locked out of there for some time. I got home and I really wanted to know, well, did my dad's house, which will be my house one of these days, if it actually burned down? He didn't have fire insurance too, which is, yeah, scary. And so I got online, I started searching for everything I could possibly find, and I came up with all these layers, including burn severity, or fire risk models. This is a burn severity came later. The I got found imagery, I found outlines of where everything was had been moving through, and then saved that workflow to create and published this map, put it on Facebook, and within 2.5 weeks, I think I had like 94,000 people that had looked at it just because of the spread, because I kept on updating it. And so just it shows the power of this online mapping environment, how accessible it is to everybody, how if it's like tied into something meaningful in intuitive, it people will want it's excellent for displaying what's both meaningful to yourself but also to other people. And with that, so and that's where this workshop like was born from. That kind of experience. The and then as I look back on it later, I found some really neat things that we'll cover here shortly that were very it lent credence to science that had fire science that has been going on for quite some time. But I digress. Well, so again, we're going to go through each of these. On the left side, there's like some of these options, like saving your stuff frequently. That's pretty useful. Or we'll look at collapse, create apps. This is something that's good for information. There are basic tutorials that are in there that you can go through. It'll show you steps. It's not very comprehensive, but it'll get you started if you want to go through those on your own sometimes. We used to do that in this workshop, but it seemed like it was too redundant and really not on point as much as I wanted. But it just for general sense of how to do stuff, just know that there's that information is in there. That, let's get going where we are going to bring up just our browser here in the center. And then in the browser, we'll just type in ArcGIS Online, click enter, and you'll see this option at the beginning. Maybe you've done this already, but just in case you haven't, we're going to go to ArcGIS Online and sign in and enter in your credentials. I closed everything just so I could be right there with you all doing this, and then sign in. You'll see for me, it'll pop up to my content. If it's not for you, it might be something different. Good. Yeah, this thing will seem to never go away. And here we're in our content. And we're not going to worry about this right now. Some workshops will start off with doing stuff in here, like creating new items and apps and that sort of thing. But in the case of this workshop, we're just focusing on web mapping and basic web application uh, building. So what we're going to do is go straight over to the top. So once you're logged in, we don't have to, the only thing we need to do is go over to the top and click on map. So there's the map tab at the top. And as it comes in, it will be blank, unless on some occasions, if you'd had already been in here working, you might have a map pop up. Don't do this unless you have a map that just popped up. But if you did, all you have to do is go down to where it says save and open, click on that, and you'd click on new map. You don't have to worry about that probably, but just in case you were fiddling with it, for example, at the break and you have a map up, then that's how you get out of that. Create a new map. So we have a blank sheet here. I mentioned this before, just so you know, there is an information option down here that does have a little bit of tutorial stuff that you can refer to on your own later on. If you just want to kind of get the sense of how to load data and all those kinds of things. And that's what we're going to start off with is adding data. And there's two different places you can do it. And typically the easiest one is right here where you see on the left-hand side, the layers option is selected by default. And down below that, there's the add option and a drop-down arrow where you can either add from a file, URL, and some sources. We're just going to click on add, and it's going to bring up not the drop-down, the add part. And the reason for that is because it gives us a little bit different of an option here. And I have a ton of layers in here, most of which will have been created for this particular workshop, but we're going to do it from scratch. So instead of adding it from my content where I've played with these, I am going to click the drop down arrow next to my content. So you see where I'm at. So there's under layers, add, and then under my content, there's the drop down. And I'm going to go down to ArcGIS Online. So that's if I click on it, it's like the second from the bottom. ArcGIS Online is this one I want. Now this is something nice. It's funny. In my last time I touched this, I was griping because these equalizer like button, the settings were by default to something that really annoyed me. By default, it was set to title. Sometimes but now it'll give me options to search for uh, relevance, and I have to type something in to get to that. In this case, I'm going to say USA. See, as soon as I started to type, you see a relevance popped up by default. It didn't used to do that. That bugged me because you had to have your words exactly right or know when it was modified. So I'm going to type, I just close that. If it's still open for you, don't worry. Under add layer, ArcGIS Online, I'm going to type in USA, census, uh, counties. And the first one that pop up is the one that we will want. So you can see there's some information about it. And one of those things is a feature layer. That means that it's like a vector file, a shape file that's got the that well, actually there's other yeah, but anyway, so this feature, it has points, lines, polygons, in this case, polygons of counties throughout the United States. If I click on it, it'll give me further information about it, including the fact that its status is authoritative and it's shared to everyone. This is good to know in case you're creating something you're going to publish and share online. If it's available to you, it should be available to you can make your own web map of it. I mean, that's kind of the point of sharing it to everybody is that they can reshare it and you don't have to the like comment on ownership of it to whoever's looking at your web map. But just so you know that if it's authoritative or if it's what it is, this is where you get the essentially the metadata, the information about the data. I'm going to X out of that. Oh, someone's got a question. Let's see. I'm going to
Yes. Can you hear me?
yes.
Awesome. So under the information, when you click the pop out, you had mentioned that sometimes people will create something and Esri will review it and authorize it. So in this case, did Esri create it and that's why they're the owner?
I'm not sure. I assume they got it from the Census Bureau.
Yeah, I think
census tiger line. So, but they certify that yes, it came from an authoritative source. They don't necessarily, Esri itself doesn't create a lot of the layers that they authorize or create authoritative.
Great, but if someone else made it, like if the people who ran the census created it, it would say their name instead, right?
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
Esri may
yeah.
have digitized it or done some data wrangling to
Yeah.
summarize it at the level, but probably pulled it directly from the census data.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If Esri does any value added to the products, they will mark it as authoritative through them. Otherwise, it's up to the original producers like USGS, Census Bureau, whoever, or yourself to be able to document where it came from and mark it as authoritative.
In this case, it does show the owner as Esri. I think there's a couple of the other layers that we'll be pulling in a little bit that have different owners, like the Natural Resource Conservation Service, for example. I think there's one that's come from them that I think might be authoritative as well. But no, good question.
And a good thing to keep an eye on as you add things to the workshop. Kind of fun.
Exactly. Yeah, good looking out. So once we are in here, we're going to add this to our map. So we click on add. Here is the easiest way. You can also have added it from the last pop-up. And you'll see how it pops up all the way across both the continental United States and Alaska. Other places are also included, but we the way that the style comes in by default might not be what we want. In fact, I don't think it probably is. We just want to have it just as a reference of where counties might be at. There's another reason for bringing this in later that we'll touch on too, but for now, let's change the style. Again, this is like on page 21 in the directions, but we'll do it now because it's more efficient. And the way you do that is as soon as you bring it in, by default, it should have popped up on the right-hand side of your screen. Once in a while, if it doesn't, here's how you get it to come up. Say if you want to return back to it. So I have still in the add layer option. See how the top left-hand corner? If I back up out of that and I click on the layer in underneath layers, it'll open and close the options for it on the right hand side. We're going to change the symbology. And sometimes in some places it'll be called style, some places they'll see layer, edit layer style, and symbology is just the overarching term for that. So the two are synonymous, style or symbology. So let's edit this layer style by clicking that option on the right. And then the next one, style options, click it again. And if I'm going too quick for anybody, in case it's hard to see what I'm doing as well as what you're doing, then I'll keep it slow. And now we'll click on the little pencil next to the symbol style. So in here, I don't really care if there's a fill color. I don't necessarily want a fill color, but there is some occasions where it's nice to have a shadow essentially for to kind of mute out backgrounds because when it's kind of just a little stylistic sort of thing when it comes to both web apps as well as virtually any other kind of map, you want what's most important to pop the most. And one way you can do that is I could have changed this to a dark color and then give it a somewhat of transparency so it just shades the area behind. And so whatever's bright on top will pop out more. But for right now, let's not even worry about it. We're just going to make the transparency completely, yeah, so it's 100% transparent, no fill at all. And maybe change the background color to dark so it just accents it a little bit more, pops a little more. Good. Once I have that, I'll just click done. And done again. So I'm going to zoom into California in general. You'll see there's a little bit of a moment where it's rendering, where you'll see little jagged blocking lines, but once it's in position, it'll be more clear. So this you can follow along with this next step. We're gonna actually do another similar process in a moment. But so this next step you could follow along if you want. If you don't want to, it doesn't really, it won't change your map significantly in the end. But I just want to show you how, for like for the purpose of a little bit of redundancy, just to remember it, how to do some filtering and also how to familiarize yourself with the attributes of, say, something like a feature layer is like this. And the way you can do that is I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down on the layer, click it, and then click the drop down and then show table. So what you'll see in here is it has all the county names, but importantly, there's the state name that's all through here. So it shows all the Alabama counties, for example. What if we just want to have California and have that really be what's going to pop out? So we can filter by that state name while we already have the options of the counties on the side. So again, if I click on this, that was one of the reasons why I clicked on it to start with, to pop up the options on the side. So what I meant by that is by clicking on the USA census counties, it brought this up over to the right. And I'm going to go down to this little filter thing. It's the third option down on the far right. So just clicked on filter. And then we're going to add a new filter. And this is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to just say, instead of county name, I'm going to say state name is drop down arrow. Drag it down until I see California. Why it's not alphabetical, I don't know. I probably could. There it is. It's like halfway down. I click California. And then that's the only one that pops out. Click save. And now if I want to get a little bit more creative, I can do the style. Again, you don't have to do this style options. Do the pencil again, and then give it a little bit of that shade. And then click done. So in theory, that should give it that California just stands out a little bit more than it would be before. So you see how everything else is muted around it? And we don't have, now California's counties are the ones that are popping out. So before we go any further, this is a great idea always to do is to save frequently, often, because if I ever moved out of this, I don't want to lose it and have to come back and start all over again. So I'll go in here and I'll click the save option on the left-hand side, save and open, and save as. Now, I've done this a whole bunch of times, so you can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to say AGOL. You don't put underscores now. I know GIS folks, you'll see this all the time. GIS people will often put underscores between things, and there's a reason for that because certain places in, say, the tops of fields, they messes things up if you don't do that. In this case, it's better to not have underscores because the the name of your title will sometimes appear as a header on your map, depending on what web mapping application you use later. So just save yourself time. Just give it a good intuitive name. I'm going to say AGOL workshop example. Uh, and this might be Caldor Fire. That'd be actually a better name. Caldor Fire Workshop example. Say Feb 2026. So I gave it a nice, somewhat intuitive name. The folder that it's going to save to, I'm just going to leave it in my top level folder. I could put it in something like my junk folder or something like that. Actually, I'll put in junk, but it doesn't matter for you on the folder. But what does matter is you need to give it a tag. I'm going to call it junk and press enter because that'll add it in. And once you type in a new term, you'll have to push enter. And then you might say workshop. example, I can click on that option, but you need to put in some kind of tag. I put in junk just because once in a while I have to go through my folders and just delete everything that's got a tag that says junk to it. So I don't have like thousands of unnecessary files in my contents. But this is for you right now. You might not want to have junk on there, but some kind of tag. You might say Caldor, you might say fire. It could be anything, but it's the purpose of it is to make it not just discoverable for yourself. So if you go in and you want to search for a layer or search for a map, you you just type in a keyword that's going to be intuitive, that's going to bring it up when your contents get really full with thousands of levels of data or maps and layers and so forth. Then, yeah, you want to have something you can find it with. Also, when you publish it online, say you publish it for everybody, you want to have terms that anyone can find. So when they search for relevance for a map, that's this, your map's the one that pops up. So with that said, once I've saved my map, all I do is click save at the bottom and we'll be back there. And look, it took a second for the see, remember I put the transparency a little bit off. Now it's now you see how California is popping out. If it's not popping out for you, don't worry, it's not going to change anything really major whatsoever. I said that for fun. So let's move on to the next data entry. So I'm going to scroll down just so you can see as well. I'm going to go down to the close to the bottom of page 13. I could type it in, or I could just copy and paste, Control C for search for Caldor Fire. And how I do that is I'm going to add this in from ArcGIS Online again. So I can add it by clicking on the add drop down, just the, not the drop down, but just click the add. Click the drop down here and select ArcGIS Online. And then Control V, but or you can just type in Caldor Fire. And the first one that pops up is the Caldor 2021 DINS public view. So that's the Damage Inspection Network Service. I have a good friend that was one of the people that did all these inspections for this fire, environmental scientist. But and so they once they get collected all the data, tabularize it, and then a couple months after the fire, this came out. And what I'll do is I'll click on this, and you'll see that it doesn't say authoritative, but this was created by the Cal Fire, or at least contract group of people that work for Cal Fire. And this is the results of the fire, the damages that occurred essentially. And how we'll do is we'll just click on add. And what it'll do is it'll automatically zoom us to the area, but it's going to take a second for it to render. Now, when it came in, you'll see a legend that will automatically pop up on your screen. This is not something that you necessarily want, depending on the way that your final product's going to be. In this case, it's not going to be something that I really want. And so how we get rid of that is that we go over to the properties at the top right-hand corner. So it'll be by default, you'll see it on the table to the side. Go over to properties and click on the little equalizer bar, the sideways equalizer, and then click off on show in legend. You can have it on, and in fact, when you click your legend, in this case, you might in some cases want to have it on, but the way that we're going to be creating our map is that I would turn it off. You miss that, it doesn't matter because it won't be it won't make any major significant difference, but just that's something that sometimes you don't want to have all kinds of stuff in your legends later on. Good. So now, again, you can see it because I shaded that background. It pops just a little bit extra. So we'll what these are, if I click on one of them in the map, and in theory, here I'm going to reduce this down, and I click on one, finally it comes up, It'll give information about the site, and sometimes it'll give photos of what the damages were at that given site. Part of that is related to how high in the contents the layer is located at. Finally, I clicked on one and it did come up. Yeah, so you'll see the level of damage. Yeah, that was a tremendous fire. That was sad. It was like 400 something houses built burned in just the Grizzly Flats area. It was so hot. My dad's best friends, he had a car that wasn't running and was there, and it wasn't even near trees, but it was so hot the rims of the car melted down to the ground. It was yeah, very, very hot. That's the next thing we're going to look at is related to burn severity. It's kind of where the segue into that. And this burn severity layer is the next one in the option in ArcGIS Online under Caldor Fire. It still should be up for you. And that is the Caldor Fire burn severity. This is from the NRCS. I could click on this. It'll probably show that it's not authoritative, and it isn't, but it does come from a good source. Is USD, the USDA, I believe, USGS.
USDA.
Um, USDA, yeah, USDA has the NRCS Natural Resource Conservation Service branch. And they do a lot of great work like this, including like bird severity modeling in this case. And if I click on add that to the map, it'll take a moment to come up, but this is going to introduce you to something that's completely new. I'm going to close this, by the way, this X out of this so I can see it on my screen a little bit better. Drag this over. What's happening? We didn't see anything change. And here's the reason for that is that some layers, the way they were created for whatever map purpose that they were created for, they have limitations on their visibility. And this one is one of those layers. And how I change that is I'm going to go up. So while the Caldor fire is in the contents, I'm going to back out of this. We don't need to be in here anymore. Top left, add layer. While the final burn severity, if I back up, you'll see that it's grayed out. You can see there's an eyeball that says that you can see it, but it's not dark like the other two layers that are in there. And that's because it's beyond the set visibility range as it comes in. And how we change that is we can click on it, make sure it's up on the side to the right. Click on the equalizer and go down. And you can see this visibility range. The visibility range is if you go beyond, see the little triangle? If I go to the left side of it, it will appear in the background. So we'll want to have that all the way scoped, all the way as like world level, so it pops up no matter what. But what I did for my map, the one that I created, is I drug this over a little ways, like neighborhood level. That way, if I zoomed in on it and I wanted to look below the burn severity layer to what the ground looked like there using a different base map, then I was able to do that. That's the way I did the map that I published on Facebook that everybody liked, because everyone wanted to zoom through the levels of different layers to see where it could identify where their properties were and that kind of thing. So I can adjust the visibility there. But just so you know, this little triangle is going to be the zoom level that it's at. So you can look at it, have it most somewhere in the middle there. Good. Once that's done, then I can reduce it, clicking on the equalizer again and zoom in. Good. Now, you'll notice that, and this is similar in any GIS product, is that the order that you see in the layers is the order that they stack on the map. So if it's on the top here, it's on the top on the map. We don't want the fire burn severity covering everything up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that and drop it down at least one level. And granted, I have to like zoom in and out just a little bit for it to refresh. By the way, hopefully you have a mouse or a trackball. I forgot to mention that earlier. If you don't, doing this on a touchpad is really hard on a computer, but But yeah, this is it's nice to be able to like zoom in out. Is good. Now, this is kind of important. This is going to be some of our key layers. Sorry. Got a little dry throat talking too much. Ah, that's better. Good. When I don't come up for air, yeah, that happens sometimes, especially as allergies are kicking in. Genoa mentioned that earlier. It's like, oh yeah, that's the downside of the beautiful, bright, green, sunny days. So, all right, back to the map. So this is important. The layer names are going to carry over to legends and in other locations in your web mapping applications later on. And so it's a good idea to change those sorts of things here and now to make them as intuitive as possible. So the way that we're going to do that is under the layers pane. You might have to click, if you're not already there, you might have to back up a little bit by clicking a little back arrow where the layers is shown on my screen. And then click the three little dots, the options that are next to it, and then select rename. In this case, is Caldor 2021. I could change that to something like Caldor Fire, get rid of the underscores. Um, DINS damage. So I did Caldor Fire DINS damage report. So there's just to give it something that's going to be clear, and then click OK. And then I'll do the same thing for the other ones of these. So I'll say Caldor, change that rename, Caldor soil burn severity, or Caldor fire. Click OK. And now then everything there in the layers now has a clear, intuitive name. And then if it pops up in your legend later on, then it's not going to have those underscores and look funky. And so, it's going to, you won't have to go back. This is where you need to change that, by the way. If you publish a web mapping application, which will make sense in a bit, in you don't like the way it is, the legend is there, you need to come back here and change it. So there's and also that goes for, say, if you, for the DINS damage report, there's the option to change your, let's see, change labels, effect styles, properties. Yeah, there's, you need to, anything that you want to change in these settings here are going, they're going to need to, I was looking for pop-ups. There's like pop-ups. If you have to, like, you can find those under the, in the various settings over on the side over here.
It's
But you'll
up
have to
to on the far right.
what's
Yep.
that?
It's up to on that far right panel. Yeah.
There it is. I knew it was there. I just had stuff over it. And I was trying to hunt with Zoom stuff, kind of partially covering it. Okay, yeah. So the pop-ups, that's where you can go in and change the what the settings are in here. We're not going to get into it so much, but just know that this is where you do all those kind of adjustments in there. All right, so you might have seen there between on the in the break, I scrolled down to the top of page 15, which is the next set of data that we're going to be bringing in. This is not really something, this is not at all something we're going to use for our final product, but I wanted to bring it in here just because it's one, it showcases how you can pull in stuff from other than ArcGIS Online, even though ArcGIS Online commingles its stuff with Living Atlas. You can reach it through ArcGIS Online in most cases I've found, but Living Atlas is a fantastic place for certain types of data. And in one of these cases is for fire risk or wildfire risk. to communities. And this is the part where I mentioned that it really lends credence to the strength of fire science that's out there. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to highlight and control C or copy wildfire risk just for my search term. You can type it in if you want. And we'll go to the map and go this time. Yeah, we'll instead of clicking add, we'll click the drop down. Nope. We still have to click the add. I was going to see if Living Atlas was an option. But we'll go down in here, click instead of My Content or ArcGIS Online, we're going to go to Living Atlas as the third from the bottom. Good. So Living Atlas. Good. And now what we have here for our search term is that wildfire risk. And the first option is what we're going to want to go with. So wildfire risk communities. And this is a fire hazard map. If I click on this and scroll down, you'll see that it's produced by the U.S. Forest Service. And it is authoritative. Here's an example of one that didn't come from Esri that is authoritative. And Genoa mentioned in the comments I saw during the break that yes, that you can apply to Esri to get your material designated as authoritative if you're with, for example, if you're with an institution like this. Good. So this is and this gives a bunch of information about the how this was created or the source of it. And we'll click on add. And one thing that's going to happen is this will cover up the rest of everything. This is new. It fades in. It didn't used to do that. It's just gradually fades in over everything instead of just comes in and tiles. Kind of a neat effect. Maybe not as fast as I'd like sometimes. But here's an interesting thing that I noted that look where the if you could remember in your mind's eye where the Caldor fire scar was at, you can see that now in the a fire risk model of what's at risk or not. What was really interesting until they updated this in, I think it was August 22nd of last year, and which I should have saved and downloaded that at some point. I could probably find the older version of it somewhere. But the trend of what burned the hottest was almost identically matching what the Caldor fire burn severity results were. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag this top one down. So what I did is I went back at the top instead of like where I was in my add layers option. I'm going to go back, grab the wildfire risk communities and drag it down below the other two options. So then when I scroll a little bit, you'll see the burn, the actual recorded fire soil burn severity. In the past example, when this fire burn severity option was turned off, when I clicked on the eyeball and it faded out, where it said it was going to burn the hottest, it burned almost exactly with a slight different scale difference, it burned the hottest and most severe where where the model predicted it to burn. This is just like a little fun kind of practice. I'm turning it off now. It actually is a really big burn severity risk layer. Be great if the insurance looked at it, but I don't know that they do. The fire insurance is really high right now, by the way, as I recently found out. So I'm going to go back and turn back on the fire severity. That was just for show and tell purposes, just to show that there's other options out there from the Living Atlas. Another option that's available, we could add in air quality. So I can copy and paste that in. This is not necessary. This is again show and tell. This is just purely optional, just because it might be interesting to you, but it also leads to a point that I want to make here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in from Living Atlas. So I did the add, so I'll back that up again. I'll click the add again and click Living, the drop down to go down to Living Atlas. And this time I'm going to search for air quality. So the Air Now quality monitoring site is available. And so I'm going to add that in. Click add. And it pops up in there. I don't need the pop-up, honestly, so I'm going to turn it off on the far right-hand side. But what you see here, for example, is we have up at the top right-hand corner, you see a green dot with 22. That's 22 parts per million, I believe it is. The for smoke, which is not very much. During the fire, it got over, I think, 2,000. It was really bad. You couldn't see a block. It was really rough. But here's the thing: is these values are updated about last I recall it was 4 times a day that they're updated. And if you wanted to capture the value at a given point in time, there's a way to do that that's handy, is a kind of a like a trick. I wouldn't say, like, not so much a trick, but it's like a trick that you can use to take ownership essentially of data that you find online that I've used many times before, and this is a good time to do it. And one of the reasons why I brought in the county layers, and this is how we do it. So I'm going to go over to the top left-hand corner where it says add data and backup. I'm going to, the air quality is already on the right-hand side, but if it wasn't, I could click on or off to make sure the pane for that is up. So the first one there. And then I'm going to go down to the analysis, is the third from the bottom on the right. There's a little like kind of triangle looking thing with circles. And I'm going to click on analysis. If I want to capture the values that are there for that for the air quality at this given point in time, the way I can do that is I can join it with another layer. And we happen to have this handy dandy county layer in the background. So what I can do is go up to tools. By default, the summarized data is the first option that is there, and right underneath that. So I did the bottom analysis, then tools, and then I'm going to click on join features. The target layer I'd click would be the air quality, and then I would join the layer with the Caldor fire burn severity. No, not that. Excuse me. The very bottom, the USA Census counties. I'm not going to run this right now, but because I'd have to put in, I have to do join 1-to-1. That's fine. Keep only the first match record. Inner join, I'd have to put in an output name. I'm just going to scramble some random. Oops, it doesn't like. I'm just going to throw in some letters that are random. I'm not going to run the process, but I'm going to use this just for an example of how you'd click estimate credits. Either a spatial or attribute join is required. Oops, I have to go up. I missed something. I was too much of a join 1-to-1, sort by.
It was up a tiny bit. There are toggles for use spatial relationship or use attribute relationship.
Oh, yeah, use spatial relationship. Oh, that's right. Selection option within. Distance. I do actually. I was hoping I could just like add in just a couple little things and then be able to get the results, because I'm not going to run it. Join 1-to-1. Good. interjoin. Sometimes, by the way, you'll use environmental settings to say, I only want to use what's in my full extent of my screen right now. So display extent. I could click run, but I'm not. I'm just going to click estimate credits. Is what I really was getting at. It's going to be like 0.01 credits. I wanted to show you that just to show how far 10,000 credits would go. But what the result of that would be is whatever name you gave. In this case, I gave it a goofy name just because I didn't feel like typing something in. But that would become your point layer with in this case, it would be like 22 would be the parts per million value. And the county information would be one of the attributes in the attribute table. So if I looked at this one's attribute table, it would have all the same information, but at the end, it would just have the county because it would be joined with that other layer. Not going to do it because there's no point waiting in a minute, but just so that's one way that you can create your own layer. It would end up in your contents. You would have ownership of it. And then you could show what it looked like at a previous, like 2 months from now, you could show what the value was today compared to the doubt value there, for example. Good. Let's do some more filtering here. We had about almost an hour to go through this stuff, and we had plenty of time. So I want to miss anything that's fun and good. So we're going to filter the layer, specifically the DINS layer. Let's get rid of the air quality one for now. We're not going to need it again. So in the layers, I want to tidy things up. So under options, I'm going to click on that and say remove. The wildfire risk communities, I'm going to click the drop down on that, say remove. Good. So we just have the 3 main layers there. Hopefully those layers are of interest to you too, because if you happen to have an account and use, say, if it was August or I don't know, August, September, there's fires going on, you have asthma, you might want to go on there and check that and look at it, or see where fires are burning at in the number, or what the risk is in a given area. I mean, those are, to me, those are interesting and valuable layers. Hopefully, yeah. It's nice to know that there's data like this that's available when you want it. But let's get back to, Melanie, you had a question. You can unmute if you want.
Sorry. This might be a weird question. So you merge the air quality layer with counties.
Yep.
So is it sophisticated enough that if you merge the air quality with one of the Calder fire layers, would it like give you the data from that time? Or do you have to like copy and do that freeze when it's happening for it to stay static?
Okay, so I use the county layers because it's a large polygon and it needs to be underlying what what the air quality is, and there was no air quality over the burn severity layer, for example. The other element is that the uh counties are polygons, and I don't recall what if this looks a lot like a raster to me. If this is a raster, it's not going to give you any value. It won't even work. So it's, yeah, just using a basic layer like the counties is why I would use it, because it covers everything. It's behind it. It's simple, and it doesn't become too complex that way. Hopefully that answers the question.
We have kind of a related question about spatial clipping, essentially. So, like, if you had DINs for all of California, how would you restrict it to California if it didn't have a state attribute field?
Oh,
I don't think there's a clip explicitly in ArcGIS on that.
I have to look, see where it's at. Yeah, in ArcGIS Pro, I for sure know how to do that. select by, I don't think there's a select by, you could do a join with just the California layers and then you could filter it by the join to the California.
Hey,
Does
Sean,
that make
is
sense?
there a select by location under analysis?
Let's look at this. Actually, I'm going to highlight the DINs and I'm going to go to analysis and then I'm going to back up out of the join and let's search select.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
But a workaround. So that's where I put on my thinking cap there for a second. And another example of where the spatial join could work. If you had something like the California or like the counties, you could join the DINs to the county map and then filter by either county or state with the
Ooh,
filter tool.
it did just look. Try that second one. Find by attributes in a location,
Okay.
and then build a new query. And then it
Uh-huh.
gives you all. There's a spatial expression, and it will let
Okay.
you select based on other layers in your map, I think.
Okay. Well,
So
intersects. Okay.
I have not
And
played with this,
I
but
haven't either.
this seems
so
promising.
it is
Check it
kind of the
out.
same concept of what I was just talking about, but in a different way of filtering.
Yeah, ArcGIS
Yeah.
Online does a lot of the things Pro does, but it takes you like your brain has to rewire a little bit. So
Yeah.
this was a good question.
Yeah, it is. Great. So yeah, you could join by the U.S. Census counties, but it covers all of them, so that wouldn't matter. You'd have to filter that layer first because it when you run a process, it'll only run on the area that is filtered. In this case, I have just California. Everything else is filtered out, so it would work for just California. But if I had it only selected for El Dorado County, then it would filter just for that county, even though a part of it did run over to another county, I believe. But yeah, good looking out there, That's good. And good question. So let's do that filter that I was talking about though. And you'll see that there's ways that you can do it for attributes. You do it for the as we saw there by the location, but in conjunction with another layer. Let's do the go to the DINs again, click on the filter button, which is oops, sometimes this happens. I went to something else, so I have to click. Oh, there we go. Now I clicked it a couple times until the filter was up above, and then I can click on filter. So what I meant by that is I had to click on the DINs on the left-hand side to get it to be clickable on the right again. And in the filter, I'm going to click and add new. In this case, so I'm just going to set like kind of a theoretical objective here is that say we happen to have if there's houses that are already burned down, we might not have it's the knowing their locations might not be important to say a a like a resource advisor in the area. Each of the 58 counties of California have natural resource or agriculture advisors. They have SNAP benefits in some cases. There's various resources. Well, we might want to offer those resources to just places that are not burned down, just that are partially burned down. The way we could do that is we can say the damage is, we can set any level, but for this case, let's just do affected 1 to 9%. And that's still quite a few. I'm going to zoom in and out a little bit. That's still quite a few that are affected. Let's do, and you'll see everything that is grayed out. That means that I just haven't saved it yet, by the way. I'm going to select add new, and I'm going to say not the damage, but I'm going to say the structure type. We don't care if it's like a garage or something, is a single family, single story. And so we're looking at two conditions. The damage is 1 to 9%, and the structural type is a single family. You could also do this, by the way, I'm just doing it the simplest way. You could do is not, but that takes a lot more time because you're going to have to say not, like a whole bunch of expressions to get rid of everything you don't want. For example, if you wanted single and multi-story um, buildings, or if you wanted 1 to 9% and 9 or 10 to 25%, for example. If you wanted to have those, you have to do a whole bunch of knots. We'll just do it simple for now. So we'll have, yeah, 1 to 9 in single family and then save. And then the grayed areas are gone. Now here's another tool that you can use that is extremely similar to the join function is the enrichment tools. And what I'll do there, and this will be just, by the way, this will just be a quick show and tell. You don't have to do this. The trying to get this to zoom. There we go. I'm going to go down to the analysis again and reduce this up and go to enrich data, enrich layer. Takes a second. And so features to enrich, I would say the DINs. You don't have to do this. Again, repeating. Enrich data, I'm going to select variable. I could say income, maybe I'm interested in 2025 median house income. This, I believe, is by census tract. I'd have to look at the what level it says it is, geographic area. I have to read through it to find out what scale it is at. But for now, I'm just using this as a simple example. And then I would select that. Now, I've already done this because it actually takes a few minutes for it to enrich it, but what it does is it finds that data online that's coinciding spatially with its location. And I'm going to add data from my content, all of my content. You can't do this. I did it already before the workshop. And now it actually, oh wait, I had multifamilies. I was just playing around. So it was actually the multifamily, but the same concept will apply. Now, if I look at the attribute table there, it'll have the damage level, single family residence. But if I go all the way over to the right-hand side, you'll see what the median house income for that census tract is. So you can, and the idea there would be that if you needed the target, say lower income areas to offer services to, you'd have that, you can know where a target audience might be for certain services. But I digress. I'm going to remove that. Good. And we're going to move on to adding tabular data. So if we go to the directions, I scroll down, there's tabular data. There's a link there that you'll want to go to. You might have to copy and paste it into your browser. In my case, because it's in Google Drive, I can just click on it. And so I'll go back again. Oops, scoot this over. So that would be on the top of page 16 of the directions. You'll want to go to this and you will download it, put it in your downloads. And that I've already done that today, and I found out earlier it's not happy with me when I try to do it too many times. It's with the same file, but once this file comes in, I'll come to that in a second. I'm going to just open it. You don't have to do this. I'm going to open it with Google Sheets just to show you what's inside of there. And what you'll see is a field ID number, a location, so what the name of the office is, and then you'll see that the address is all in one field. The app will recognize this and will make it super easy for you when you bring it in. But which is good to know that it's this way. The other thing is sometimes, and I did this recently with a data set, was that it was in latitude and longitude. It works, it automatically recognizes that it was an X and Y coordinate, and that's how it brought it in as well. But this is what it looks like when it once you download it. But instead of a Google sheet, it's a CSV file. It has to be CSV for bring it in the way we will. So what I want you to do, if you haven't already, download this and it will end up in your downloads. In my case, it's the CSV file here. I changed the name a little bit for this workshop. And once it's downloaded, I'm going to go back to my ArcGIS online session. Now here's a spot where we're not going to use the add option under the layers. We're going to do it from the add button at the top left-hand corner because it'll give you the option of downloading or uploading from a file that you've downloaded. So this time we're going to go up to the very, very top corner of your window where it says add, click add, and then we are going to add layer from file, third option down. You can drag and drop it in if you want to. I'll do that. You can also go from your device. I can also do that. I tend to like to drag and drop, but either way works. I'm going to grab that CSV file, drag it, drop it on there, and it'll automatically move you on to the next step. It says, how would you like to add this in the automatic defaults? Good. As a hosted feature layer, add it to the map. We'll click next. I've already done it with this file, so I can't do it again, but I'll go all the way to the end and then I'll let you do it. So it'll automatically recognize the field ID, the location, and the types of data. We'll go to next. And then it'll recognize automatically that locations in one field. If it was latitude and longitude, it'd be in two fields typically. And then it'll show how many credits it takes to, this is called geocoding, geocode these addresses. All you're going to do is do next and next until it's done, and it'll automatically put it into your, actually, I think we might, one more, I have to put in a tag. See, it says layer already exists. I'm not going to do it again, but you'll get in here. You'll have to put in a tag. So I'll put in junk, but it would be whatever tag you want to say that's going to be intuitive. ANR cooperative extension offices, you can have that as a tag, or ANR, whatever. You'd have the folder where it would go. And once you're done with this, then you would click create and add to map. And it should add to your map. I'm going to skip that for now because I've already done it once today. So you'd click add to map. The only difference is I'm going to just take it from my contents. Not that one. Actually, there's another one that works better for me. Because I was messing with that one. Now, so now I have little dots. They're going to vary, depends on what which it might be like a little dark blue dot. I don't know what it'll show up on here. I played with this one previously too, so you probably could barely see it on your screen if you're looking at my screen share. But but I have like a little round dot that's there, but I don't like that round dot. I want to have something that's way clearer. So what I'll do is I'm going to go up to the top left-hand corner, click on the back button next to add layers, click on the ANR locations that I just brought in, and then go over to the style option. It's the second one down on the right. Because that the little red dots just doesn't tell you, it does not intuitive. I'm going to change the style of this, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to scroll down where it says style options. So again, clicking on the ANR locations, I'm going to go over to style. There's the second one down. I'm going to click on style options. It is right almost in the center. Do the little pencil next to the symbol type. And this time, instead of just accepting the current symbol, I'm going to click on that option. So you'll see where it says basic point. I'm going to click on that basic point, and instead of basic shapes, I'm going to click the drop down and go to government. I just know from experience that if I scroll roughly halfway down, I'll see something like a building somewhere that pops out. I have to like go back and forth. I thought it was closer to the midway. Anything that looks kind, you can be any one of these, but here's one that has a building with people. There's a broken building. There's a dispensary, couple options in here. I hadn't noticed those before. But yeah, you can just select something that's intuitive. In this case, I'm fine with the one that has like looks like a building with people in it. And then I'll click done and enlarge it to something more like 35. So it actually stands out. Good. And then click done. If I don't want it, I can leave that in there as an option for the it'll show up in the legend later on, and I'm okay with that. If I wanted it not to, I'd hit the properties and say don't show it in the legend with this toggle. But it's fine the way it is. Now I'll reduce that. So now you see the ANR cooperative extension offices. For the sake of our final map product, I might go over and click on that on the three horizontal dots and rename it to ANR CE offices or office, just singular. It's fine. Okay, so then it's a little bit more intuitive. Now, I think I got one more step, if I remember correctly. Actually, two more little steps, and then we'll do the web mapping applications to the last half hour. Good. So on this one, we're going to, I'm going to scroll down, make sure I didn't miss anything. Attributes, so Deary did that. Filters, we did that. Enrichment did that. Join layers did that. All right. There's fire perimeter data and the proximity option. All right. So say we wanted to find out which, like, create a roadmap from one place to another. And so we want to have the what's the easiest way to get from the Placerville Cooperative Extension Office to these houses that might need services? Way we can do that is using the analysis tools again. So we'll click on the ANR CE offices or office, go down to analysis. This time, I'm going to back up out of enriched data. And we are going to use, let me see. Let me refer to the directions, remember. So we're going to go to, the proximity, of course. So I'm going to reduce this and go down to proximity, use proximity, and find closest is the option. So if you see that on the far right side, because I just did that kind of quick, we're going to go with CE offices selected. We'll go down to analysis. You have to scroll down a little bit to use proximity, and then finally click find closest. In this case, the input layer would be the ANR CE office. The nearest layer would be the DINS damage report. We could say driving time, the default is fine, or we could select uh, driving distance. Either one is the same. In this case, go down, there's like you can time specified if it was like departure times. Think of this as like how you would map a route on Google Maps, sort of. Uh, Limited search, the default's fine. Anything with a red dot you have to fill in. I might say proximity to, but I'm not going to type it all in because we're actually going to open this because it takes a couple minutes for the process and it's faster to just bring in the layer that I have already created. So I just type in a little bit of information there, but I'd also toggle on the include route layers to the route layer item. So it would show the road route on your map. It would save to the folder here. And again, if I was going to do this with just the locations that we can see to the Placerville office, I wouldn't do the full extent of all of the cooperative extension offices. I would just use the display event extent. Again, I'm going to estimate credits. In this case, it's going to be 0.5, not many. But I'm not going to click run because, again, it takes a little while. Instead, I'll have all of you do this. So we'll go down. It's number 7 on the top of page 19. Nearest in our facility to threatened structures. Control C. So we can just search for this on ArcGIS Online. I bet you're all getting pretty used to adding data, right? We'll go into add data. Click the add data option again. Instead of my content, I'm going to go to ArcGIS Online. And I'll search Control V. And you'll see that I put it up there, hosted feature layer. And then I'll add this layer to my map. This would be the result of what you get from processing it over here, which I can reduce now by clicking the little properties equalizer bar. Good. So now you see that there's a route. Well, the thing is that it's on top of other things because it's the newest thing that come in. So I might change that just a little bit. I'm going to go back to add layer. And I probably want my cooperative extension offices on top. And I might want my DINS damage layer houses on top. And so I just pulled them up. Now, if I kind of scroll a little bit, they will pop up on the right place. And we have all but one of our layers in to then create our final map. Let me double check the chat. Make sure. Nope, it looks like we're good on the chat. So one more layer to add in. Oh man, I was so excited when I saw this. When I was looking for data and couldn't figure out where the perimeters were. Well, it so happens that CAL FIRE, as the fire was progressing every day, they were creating a new fire perimeter map. So I was able to track to see where it was heading. At this point, I had people calling me and asking me, "Hey, I heard you have a map of the fire." And so I would go and check to see if there was any updates. And it was usually like later at night, they were pretty efficient. They got this, what we're going to look at here in a moment, up every day. They're GIS folks. So what that is this layer right here. It's on page 19. The exercise fire perimeter data. This is from CAL FIRE's FDP database. If you copy that and paste it into your browser, in my case, I can just click on it. I'll get this list of dates. This is the fire data. Now, once you're in there, don't follow where I'm going here for a second. I'm just going to show you what else is in here. If I go up, don't do this. If I go up parent directory, So this is incident data that I was in, and I go up higher, that's in the GIS folder. If I go higher, that's from the Caldor fire that was here. But if you look in 2021, these are the 2021 incidences. You see all of these different fires that there's data on. If I go up one more, I can see that at least in this database, there's 22, 23, and 24 uh, layers of fire that are available. Now I'm going to dig back down in there and get back to where we were at in the GIS in the incident data. And at the far bottom, I'm going to go down to the second from the bottom. For some reason, there's an error in the last one, but this is basically when the fire was all over and done with. If I go to the very last one with the date 2021-09-16, click on that. Inside of there, you'll see two available sets of data. One is a perimeter zipped up. It's a shape file. The other is a geodatabase. We don't need the geodatabase. It's easier, not for ArcGIS Online at least. Or we'd use the primer data. And so what I want you all to do is go ahead and click on this and it will download automatically. I've already done this once today, so it'll give me a 1. And I'll go inside of that. So what I did is I just downloaded it, went down to my downloads automatically. I go to that folder. Oops, go into my folders. I'm just going to show you what's inside of it by double clicking it. You could unzip it, but don't. You just, the way it is fine. It's perfectly good for what we're going to do. By the way, I'm going to copy it though, copy the name because I'm not going to add it to my project again today. But if I double click and go inside of it, you'll see that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are all elements or peripheral files to a shapefile that are bundled together for ArcGIS Online to recognize how it all plays together. And that includes the database file, which is the attribute table. There's the shape file itself. There's let's see, the SHX, the index file. There's all these different files that collectively are referred to as a shape file. They all need to come in. Well, not all of them. You need a few of these for it to actually render in ArcGIS Online. The bright side is the way that it downloads for you is exactly the way that you would want to upload it to your map. So that's what we're going to do. From here, I'm going to go back to my map. This time I'm going to add data again from the top left-hand corner and click on that. And then I'm going to add layer from file. What you could do is you can drag and drop, or this time I'll just navigate to it and I would click on it and click open, but I'm not going to open it because I've already opened that one today. So just go ahead and go through the next, give it a tag. So give it a name of like fire perimeter or something to that effect. And while you do that, I am going to open up the one that I already have today. So I'm just going to add for my content. I'm going to add it in. So hopefully it all comes in for all of you just like this. Good. Now I'm going to just change the style a little bit. I'm going to give you a second to catch up there in case you needed to. Hopefully it came in and it looks good here. I'm going to check the chat, make sure no one's having trouble. Let's see. There you go. Just a good question about Living Atlas. Cool. How do we filter this layer to show only California results? Is on top of everything.
I'm looking up the custom markers. I think you can do it.
Oh yeah. You can do custom markers. Here, there's can't do it on a polygon, but on a point you can. So
The sort of thing that I'm sure they enabled you to do, but you do want to think about how it's going to interact with the next few steps of your workflow. So, um,
yeah. So that actually is a good one. Yeah, I can show you afterwards at the end of the hour. But the issue is that if you bring in your own custom icons, they break a lot of things. They don't like, for example, if you try to bring it in on say field maps, it won't show up at all because it just doesn't recognize the custom marker. I tend to avoid them, but you can bring in custom markers. Let's change the style of this one right now then. We're going to go to do that same way as we've done it before. We're going to click on edit layer style. So again, if I back up over here, it would be using the perimeter data that we brought in. I'll click on the edit style on the right, style options, the little pencil. And this time I'm going to click on the fill color is black and then make the transparency like about 75%. And then click done. So see how it really kind of pops out. But the problem is it's on the very top. I'm going to grab that and drop it down below like the third one down. Now when I scroll in and out, it'll end up being a little bit more clear. One last step, and then we'll publish it, is that I'm going to go and change my background, my base map. This is working. One of the reasons I don't do the base map sometimes, and maybe this is just because it's a holdover from ArcGIS Pro, is that the base maps tend to be sometimes more complex, and so it slows down scrolling around on your map, and it just takes longer to refresh. But I save the base map often to the end. So I'm going to click on the base map and select hybrid imagery. See how it kind of slowly rolls in? Don't want to have always that be the case. And then I'm going to click done on the right hand side. So here, look what we got. We got a map that looked just like what I showed you at the very beginning today. One last thing, let's do a save. And let's do this. Let's go down to share map, your share option, and click manage sharing. So right now you'll see that it's shared only at your level. There's no reason not to share this one in particular with everybody. If I was going to do, if I wanted to set it to a group, I could edit group sharing as well and select the options there to select only sharing with groups. But for now, oops, sorry, I'm going to go back to share map, manage sharing, and I'll share it with everybody for right now and click save. And if any of the layers in the map are not shared to everybody anywhere, which these ones were, it will give you a prompt and you'll have to say, yes, share all the underlying layers with everybody. If, say, some of those layers we brought in were private. Good. Let's do quick, and this is pretty quick. It's like kind of like taking the map over the finish line, and we can do that in 10, 15 minutes, depends on how excited we want to get on it. I'm going to show you two super basic ways to create a web mapping application. Again, if you want to learn more about web mapping applications, we can, oh man, that's funny. My phone picked up what I was saying and started giving me a AI answer to it. So, but we'll create first an instant app. And the way we do that is, oh, by the way, now that we're done with this, if we wanted to share the map, we could copy this URL and send it to our cousin and it would work. So if I copy that and say I brought up, oops, I got some stuff in the way. If I brought up Microsoft Edge or something like that and plug this in there, enter, takes a second. Look, the map will show up there. So it's shareable that way. You can put it inside of an iframe, but look, it has other stuff on here. You don't want like all the legend stuff, and it might not be, it's not that pretty. So I'm going to close that down. And you can put that in your web page or iframe. But the way that you usually I like to do it is I create an app from this. And now I'm going to X out of this here. I'm going to create an app, and it gives me a bunch of options. My two favorite are Instant Apps and Experience Builder. Instant App is really quick and easy. Click on the Instant App. So I'll back that up again. So I was in here. I selected Create App, the second option from the bottom, and I selected the top option was Instant App, and it brought me into this new pane. There's all these bunches of different options that are available to you, and you can get information like you can do the drop down and give a preview of each one of those, but there's just too many of them too. That'd be a whole other class. So we'll just go with the basic one and choose this one. So we'll choose this. Well, it'll carry over the same tags. I'm going to say app just for my own sake, so I know what it is. And then, but you'd want to give it a nice intuitive name that'll show up in the results, and I'll create an app. Good, and it'll slowly but surely come in. Now, there's a couple little things. One is that you can use the get started option on the bottom left-hand side, which will give you quite a bit of it'll lead you through a number of steps. I'm not going to do that right now because we're going to do it our own way, and it'll cover most of those steps already. And one thing I do not like, because it doesn't really help much, it doesn't express anything virtually, it just limits you, is to uncheck the express, and you'll see some different options that you'll almost always want. So the first one of these is, so we'll select the map view is fine. The one thing that I do like especially is the map area toggle button. So under map down here, there's a toggle button, and then it lets you configure your map area. And how that works is I click on configure. It'll take a little bit for it to render. I'm going to bring it right to where I like it. And then I'm going to click set. Now, if I move back, you'll see there's a green box around my area. That's going to be the default extent of your map when it shows up on a browser. So that's I like to set the extent, and then I'll set save on the right hand side. So the way I did it was under map, toggle on map area, configure, zoom in till you like the area, and then click set on the right and then save. Next, I'm going to go down the side. There's about. It doesn't really give me anything that I really like to use. Interactivity, though, you can modify some various things in here. You can, you can set a number of things, but I don't usually end up having explore, navigate. That sometimes is important. So, well, interactivity, explore, navigate. I like adding. You can add in bookmarks, a home button, a compass. That's the one I was looking for. Sometimes I have a compass. It's just the old cartographer in me that likes things that you should have a north arrow, but you don't really need it in most maps. But you can see that you have a bunch of options in here. There's a scale bar too. That's one that I like. So you can add those two in. Good. And then I can go back. Going further down, theme and layout. theme, there's a couple options. There's a light and a dark. So you can change the how I prefer the light in this case. This just stands out a little better. Themes won't be applied when there's a header is off, but you can add a header in there. I'm not going to go through all these because it's like, again, it's a very time consuming process, but the idea is that you would just go down through each one of these options along just logically from top to the next to about, and then you can just toggle on each one to see if there's something that you would like. There's a legend style, there's the classic legend style that they're different, and then you could look at it after you're done. Then you go back, introduction window. You can add that in there if you wanted to have like a some kind of splash introduction to like that you can X out off of to say this is how you interact with the map or to give it a description. That's particularly handy with field maps. And then cover page settings. You can have, again, you can go through all of these different options as we go down. You can add in logos and you name it. And then once you get down there, you can get to the get started button and look to see if there's anything else that you so that was green or blued out that you didn't already attend to, like the position manager. So you can get the position manager of move your tools around. So example, I can say that I want to move one of my options around, why that's not, or go to options. So I can say on the top left, I can change my home button to the top right if I wanted to, or top somewhere, some other location. There, pop over to the other side. And then I could go back to get started. I could add in search, you name it. You get the idea that there's all these different options. But once I'm all done, then I can share and then publish what the results. View published app. Let's see. I'm interested to see why my base map is not showing up on here. I have not seen that happen before. Hey, Shane, you still on here? He might be tied up right now.
Oh, I'm here, Sean. What's going
If
on?
you're seeing when I publish the results, it doesn't have the base map anymore.
Mm-mm.
Interesting, huh?
No, I have not seen that.
I've had stuff just
Yeah,
really load slowly lately.
maybe it's that. Maybe I have to zoom in and I have to zoom in and out, and then it finally figures it out.
Yeah, it's been a little salty.
Okay, good to know. So here we go. Now we have a nice, clean resulting map that if I copy this and bring up the other option here that I'm like explore, paste and go. You can see it looks nice. You'll see that it looks a lot nicer. Oops. It says I need to log in. That means it hasn't been shared. Aha. So I have to go back to here and share it, change share settings. So what I had to do, that's how I test it sometimes to make sure anyone can see it. In the instant app, I have to go to share, change share settings, share to everybody, save. Now, if I bring this up, enter, and it'll take a second to come in, but we have a nice map. And now if I want to add in, like click on the options here, this is not I turned off a lot of the legend information, so there's not much to that. I might remove the legend, but now you can zoom in and click on this. It's clickable, and it'll pop up information for someone that wants to refer to it. And again, you can take this and then just embed it in an iframe in a website or whatever the case is, and you have yeah, have a product that's usable. Again, there's so many different options when it comes to the templates. This was the ultra basic. There's the where you can put in titles and you name it. I can walk you through in like 2 minutes and we'll be done. The same way you would do it in Experience Builder is another web app mapping application builder is the next one over. You don't have to follow along with this one if you don't want, but I'll just show it. This is uber quick. We're getting close to the end of the hour. I want to leave time for a couple questions. The Experience Builder is the next one down, which is really common to use. In this one, I would use full blank screen and create from that. It's one of the basic ones. There's one little hiccup on this that's just annoying as can be, is it always creates the frame really weirdly small in the middle. So you have to drag it and drag it and drag it all the way out. I have to expand my screen too. Why it does that, I don't know. You have to keep on dragging it. Aside from that, it's actually really neat results. Keep on getting it out until it's out to the very corner. Good. So then it fills up the whole screen. I can set this is select the map selected. I want to set the initial view is custom like I did before, where I will zoom in to the map and click OK, and then it'll create the zoom level. The difference between this and what we were looking at before, I mean, is that you'll see that there's a whole bunch more options along the left-hand side with widgets and so forth that you can plug in there. There's you can put in like reference maps that you can pull in. There's like a call out maps essentially. You can put in tables, charts. Let me see, text. Let's use that as just one example. I'll grab a text widget, put it up in the center. You'll get the information for it will pop up on the right-hand side, and where you can, in this case, I'm going to type in just fire. Oops. Connect to data. There we go. Outdoor fire. It's too small to be able to even see it right now. So I would change the text to something large like 40 and bold. And why it's like so teeny there, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I have to change the style on a number of different things, but I would be I'd have to adjust. I'd have to play with the settings of these over on the side. Where is I'm going to make it white. Oh, and I'll get rid of that other part that's almost blacked out. So you can see how you would do it. Just looks like a typical editing option, just to change everything around. You can have the map title. You can add in North Stars, you name it, just by dragging and dropping those over on it from the right-hand side, from the left-hand side onto the map. Once you're done, difference is that you would just do the preview at the top. There's the save button at the top right-hand side, the preview button. And once published, this would be similar to the other map that we just did, but you could just have just a little bit more flexibility in the things that you saw that it was available to do. Good. With that, I'm not going to dive into that too much. The key thing is that there's tons of templates in Experience Builder. You can see all these like different various ones that I had. I just created that untitled one that I just was showing you a moment ago. if you entered into any of those templates, all you have to do is click on the help button and it'll you can show the help guide. It'll give you the kind of some of the generalized nuances of each of the templates for developing your map. All right, with that, let's do this. We have an evaluation survey that we always send out at the end of our workshops. I also, for a change, I included it in the email that I sent to you earlier. We would greatly appreciate it. I'm going to find my Zoom. Good. I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to stop sharing so that shows me here. Good. Check out the chat. Oh boy, it's going to take me a while to read through all these. Okay, Priyanka put the evaluation survey link in there. There's I know online workshops, especially on a Friday afternoon, is kind of like I want to go and start my weekend. But if you could fill that out, we greatly appreciate it. It's important to us that we show value that what we're doing here. It's meaningful. We love it. The more enthusiastic you are, that's what we have office hours for helping out anyone that wants to keep on working with this. If you find use cases that are unique to you, we're here for you. Like the more excitement on this stuff, the better, because it's yeah, we gotta it's great having a community of folks that are interested in this. And it is a great tool. These are great tools to bring to your programs as well. So yeah, if you could fill out that evaluation survey, it's in the chat. I'm going to start skimming up through there. Is there anything that I missed in here, Genoa? That might be the best way to.
I think
Any,
we got everything. If anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, this is also a great time because I think
yeah,
we are through the backlog of chat.
cool. And before anyone starts asking questions, and we can answer those for the sake of all of you, and also for anyone that ends up watching this video on YouTube later. Thank you for sitting through this workshop. Hopefully, it was valuable to you, and yeah, hope to see you again.